Jason Patric, who we all love, great actor. I said, you worked with Jim. Give me something.
Yeah.
And he said, when we did that championship season on Broadway that his late father, Jason Miller, wrote, you and Jason had a pre-show routine. Ask him what it was.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, it was to take, Jason Patric, let me set this up to people that don't know. All right, so I'm in my 50s. Are you in your 50s?
50, yeah.
Yeah. There is something about, there's a last vestige of guys in their 50s, and let me see if I can articulate this, that are liberal, open-minded, but they also have kind of this they have the last remnants of the Rat Pack and of like guyish stuff and kind of but we you have to understand that championship season, which was my first play, not even my first Broadway play. It was my first play.
Christ.
That and it was a play that I had read. I was pretty much self-educated. I studied finance in college, and then I graduated, and I essentially started to read. I mean, I had a minor in English, but I educated myself on theater, and I studied Meisner and all that. And I love that championship season, and it really is this analysis of masculinity and the 70s and kind of race and kind of, it's a really important play.
Yeah.
And it was, but our ritual, to answer the question, is before we would do the play, we would have a shot of Jameson, which is such a Jason Patric thing. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this. But like, if you've seen the play or you read the play, there is like this, there's this, and it's been confused because there's a toxic masculinity that we're dealing with today. But there is also something about this masculine, because by the way, in that play was Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, Brian Cox, Chris Noth, and me. So I was the biggest pussy of all of them. And by the way, I was a college athlete. You know what I mean? So it's like, and these guys had all achieved incredible success. Now, I would say that Brian Cox is probably more famous now than he was then. But he was, I think he had won an Olivia Award by the time.
Well regarded.
Yeah. And so it was so interesting because there was 5 egos, an incredible play. The playwright's son was in the play.
Yeah,
it was on Broadway. And when we would go out and we would start the play, you have to understand this is after 24 was, so like 24 was still in people's memory. And Kiefer Sutherland was the biggest star. It was
packed crowds.
Yeah, packed crowds. It was also when Chris Noth, Mr. Big, was still, gigantic. And I would say after every single play, every single night, we went out for a drink. And often it would end up being a mess. So we drank like we were in college. We drank like those guys drank in the play every night. So some of it is like it's great, but it's also one of those things where people may not realize this. It's like, actors find the character within themselves, but there's a morphing into, you become some of that character, and the community becomes that character, becomes their characters. And it was, it was so interesting because there's also something of, I don't think that, it was the beginning, it was, I guess, 11 years ago. Because I have a son, because my wife was pregnant and came to every performance too. During that, when it was the beginning of, there's been different ways of political correctness, but like there is like the N-word said in this play, all these things, but like the audience was fine with it, but the critical, even though this play had won the Pulitzer Prize, it was shocking. So it was shocking in that people couldn't get beyond some of the language. And so we were so knee deep in it, in understanding that this was the language that was used in small town Pennsylvania, the anti-Semitic references. It was used. It was much more of a reflection of their insecurities than being portraying them as racist or anti-Semitic. But I think that the audience today would not be able to separate that.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So
I do.
It's really interesting, and it was so fascinating because you think of like the stardom that these guys had tasted.
Oh yeah.
And the stardom and the fame that brought people to the show. I think that it was almost a disservice to the play.